When tragedy struck a small Idaho town, the internet was filled with both sympathy and speculation. Innocent people were accused, wild conspiracy theories took over, and the case became one of the most misunderstood crimes in recent history. But what really happened, and how did social media impact the investigation, for better or for worse? Let's break down the facts. Hi, I'm Alicia Kozak. I was the first child abducted by an internet predator, and for over 20 years, I've made it my mission to protect families from evolving dangers online. From speaking in schools to educating the public through the media, from working with law enforcement into shaping critical legislation, I've dedicated my life to making the digital world and the real world safer. In today's video, we're diving into a tragic case that shook a small Idaho town and captured worldwide attention. The brutal attack that took the lives of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho. And more importantly, we'll honor the victims by sharing who they were as individuals, how they were connected, and the fact that 2 other roommates survived the night of the murders. We'll also discuss the newly released frantic text messages between the surviving roommates and the newly released 911 call. And then I'll also share why this case resonates with me personally, how my own abduction, rescue, and advocacy work connect to the heartbreaking reality of this crime. By the end, I hope you'll not only understand this case on a deeper level, but also feel empowered to help prevent future tragedies. This video will not just be about recounting a horrific crime. It's about supporting survivors, their families, and communities through this unthinkable pain and learning from this tragedy to help protect others in the future. And if you're new to this story, please remember that these were real people with families who love them deeply. It's easy to get caught up in the sensational aspects of crime, but these 4 students were someone's daughter, son, best friend, sibling. Their loss left a permanent scar on the hearts of those who knew and loved them. The trial is scheduled to begin in a few months, and as media coverage ramps up, it's more important than ever to remain respectful towards the victims, survivors, and the families. Even as new details come to light, never forget the real people at the heart of this tragedy. So let's establish a timeline of what happened in Moscow, Idaho, a small college town that became the epicenter of one of the most notorious crimes of 2022. The town was thrust in a national spotlight when 4 University of Idaho students lost their lives to a brutal stabbing in an off-campus residence in the early hours of November 13th, 2022. That night, the victims had separate plans, but they all ended back at the same house. The off-campus house where the murders took place was a 3-story, 6-bedroom rental home shared by Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and the 2 surviving roommates. Kaylee Goncalves, who had recently moved out but was visiting, and Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, were also spending the night. Kaylee, who was 21 and was about to graduate early and move to Texas for a new job, was known for her confidence and fierce loyalty. Her best friend since childhood, Madison, who was 21, was a marketing major with an infectious laugh and a kind heart. Xana, who was 20, was also studying marketing, balancing school with work, and was described as being full of life. Her boyfriend, Ethan, who was also 20, was a triplet and a sports management major. He was loved for his easygoing and fun-loving nature. Each of them had bright futures ahead. But at around 4 a.m. that night, the unthinkable happened. An intruder armed with a knife entered the home and carried out a brutal attack. Investigators believe some victims were killed in their sleep, while others, like Xana, fought back as shown by her defensive wounds. The killer disappeared into the night, but he left behind a key piece of evidence, a knife sheath, which would later become a crucial clue. What makes this case even more chilling is how the crimes were discovered. Despite the brutality of the attack, a 911 call wasn't placed until nearly noon the next day, about 8 hours after the murders. All the public knew for years was that the call came from one of the surviving roommates' phones and that they described an unconscious person. But now, for the first time, we have answers. The 911 call audio has been released, and it may provide crucial insight into what happened inside that house in the hours after the attack. Before I play this clip, please be aware, this is real audio from a tragic crime scene. While it does not contain graphic descriptions, it may still be distressing for you to hear.
911 location of your emergency.
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
Okay. And is that a house or an apartment?
It's a house.
Can you repeat the address to make sure that I have it right?
I'll talk to you guys. We live at the White, so we're next to them.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
And tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates is passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. Hi, this is
And are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, Bethany, we gotta go check. But we have to. Is she passed out? She's passed out. What's wrong? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you. What's wrong? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
20, you said?
Yes, 20. Here, do you want to
Okay.
talk to them?
Hello? Hello?
Okay, I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I've talked to 4 different people.
Okay, sorry, they just gave me the phone.
Is she breathing?
Hello?
Is she breathing?
No.
Okay.
Bethany, Dylan, I need you to keep talking to them, okay? I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them.
Okay. Hello.
Okay. I've already sent the ambulance. Stay on the line. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
Say that again. There's a police here right now.
Okay. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it.
We don't have one. I think yes. Do you have a defibrillator? Yes, we have one.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
It is such a disturbing call. And after hearing this, one of the biggest questions people have had is, why did it take so long to call 911? The call reporting an unconscious person seemed vague, leading to wild theories online. But let's take a step back and consider the reality of what these young survivors went through. They were in shock. They didn't fully understand what had happened. Their bodies and their minds were likely shutting down from sheer terror. Trauma affects people in unpredictable ways. Delayed responses, confusion, and even seeming calm in a crisis are all normal reactions to extreme psychological distress. The newly released text messages between the surviving roommates might also help explain what happened during those critical hours. A chilling picture of that morning began to emerge, but nothing could prepare first responders for what they would find when they finally stepped inside that house. The students were found in a manner so gruesome that it stunned even seasoned law enforcement, and it reminds us how random and senseless violent acts can be. These 4 young people were enjoying what should have been just another fun night with friends, only to have their lives cut short in a way that no one could have anticipated. The tragedy not only shook the victims' families to their core, it sent shockwaves to the entire Moscow community. Parents began pulling their children out of school, and social media lit up with fears and wild rumors. Meanwhile, you can imagine the agony that these families felt. Many had no idea what had truly happened, especially in the initial aftermath. The community clamored for justice, for an explanation, for reassurance that this was just an isolated incident and not the start of a terrifying pattern in their safe college town. Throughout it all, the family's grief was in the public eye, turning private mourning into an unwanted spotlight. Without a suspect and no clear motive, law enforcement faced enormous pressure to solve the case quickly. In the following weeks, investigators meticulously pieced together clues, cell phone pings, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence. But with so few official details available, rumors and theories flooded social media. While some online efforts were genuine attempts to help, others definitely crossed a line, accusing innocent people and spreading false stories. And police asked for any digital footage, doorbell cameras, security recordings from the neighborhood, and that's how they learned about a white Hyundai Elantra that was seen circling the area that night. This tip led to a shocking announcement. They had identified and arrested a suspect, Brian Koberger, a criminology PhD student at a nearby university. And then came the DNA evidence. The knife sheath left at the scene contained a male DNA sample, which was traced to Kohberger. He was arrested on December 30th, 2022, and now stands accused of a brutal quadruple homicide. As you might imagine, a criminology student being connected to this kind of crime sparked intense public interest. Could his background have influenced the crime? Did he use his studies to orchestrate a plan, or did he use it to attempt to cover his tracks? These were just some of the questions swirling around the case. And with a case this complex, controversy is inevitable. Law enforcement shifting statements from initially assuring residents there was no ongoing threat to later walking that back and being unclear on the timeline led to public frustration. The trial is still ahead, and a gag order has prevented many details from being released. With limited official updates, online sleuths filled in the gaps, some offering thoughtful insights, but many spreading harmful speculation. Innocent people were falsely accused, and surviving roommates faced relentless harassment. They must deal with the trauma of that night, the shocking discovery, and the weight of public scrutiny. And I've seen countless horrendous comments on news articles and YouTube videos. The survivors and their families could very well likely be watching and reading. Often they are finding out the news at the same time as the public is. To you, this might be a horrific and fascinating true crime tale, but for them, it is a nightmare that they live through each and every day. This crime has been devastating for the victims' families, who have been fighting for justice while grappling with unimaginable loss. Their children, full of promise, dreams, and vibrant futures, were taken in a way no one could have predicted. To lose a child in such a violent way is absolutely devastating, and the pain ripples through the entire community. A tight-knit college town was left reeling, caught between mourning, confusion, and a desperate search for answers. I know all too well what it's like to have your sense of safety stolen from you in an instant. While my story is very different from this case, the fear, grief, and the desperate need for answers feels painfully familiar. Danger often appears where and when it's least expected, tearing away any sense of security. This case also reminds us of the importance of community action. Investigators received thousands of tips after asking the public for video footage from the night of the killings. These submissions, along with sightings of the Hyundai Elantra, helped lead to Kohberger's arrest. When a community comes together, it can make a difference. At the same time, the public dissected every snippet of news, combed through social media profiles, and in some cases pointed fingers at people who turned out to be completely uninvolved. Misinformation, conspiracy theories, and doxing of innocent individuals became disturbingly common. This phenomenon isn't unique to the Idaho murders, but the scale in this case was massive. It served as a stark reminder that speculation can cause real harm, re-traumatizing survivors and potentially undermining an active investigation. And finally, there's media responsibility. The Idaho murders were front-page news, and while that attention put pressure on law enforcement to solve the case, it also put victims' families under a microscope. We can stay informed while also being respectful. We can verify information before we share it. We can choose empathy over sensationalism. Tragedies like this illustrate the unsettling truth that danger can show up anywhere at any time. It might be a stranger that you encountered online, or it might be someone in your broader social circle. It's often impossible to predict. My story is drastically different in its specifics, but the emotional threads, trauma, sudden violence, and the desperate search for help are universal. When I was 13, I was groomed online by someone who presented themselves as a friend. Then I was lured from my home and held captive. I was incredibly lucky to make it out alive. And many families whose loved ones are victimized by violence don't ever get that ending. And in the Idaho case, 4 families never got to see their children come home. And this is why I've spent the last 2 decades dedicated to making our world safer. Because for every story like mine, which ended with the rescue, there are tragedies that never end as we wish they could. The heartbreak remains. These students were presumably just hanging out in a place that they felt was safe. They did nothing wrong, much like the child at a computer who believes they're chatting with a harmless new friend. They were just simply living their lives. Often danger intrudes without warning. And the reality is violence, whether an abduction or a home invasion, destroys a person's sense of safety. It not only alters the victim or survivor's path, but it also leaves ripples through their families, friends, and entire communities. The thread that ties my story to the Idaho murders is the suddenness and severity of criminal acts. We never think it can happen to us until it does. So what can we all learn from this case? Let's break it down. First, always trust your instincts. If something or someone feels off, online or offline, take it seriously. In many violent crime cases, survivors or witnesses report a gut feeling that something wasn't right. Always err on the side of caution. Second, be careful with your personal information. Whether you're online or in a real-world setting like a college campus, guard your private details. In the Idaho case, we don't know yet how the victims may have crossed paths with the suspect, but it serves as a reminder that predators can learn a lot about us from what we share, whether intentionally or inadvertently. And it's easy to assume a threat will be obvious, a stranger lurking in the dark or a suspicious message from someone clearly unstable. In Idaho, the killer entered a home where residents felt safe, and this reminds us that danger can sometimes appear in mundane scenarios, which is why developing a sense of awareness and trusting our instincts is so important. We must also remember that technology is a double-edged sword. In my abduction, the internet allowed a predator to groom and lure me, but it also became the key to finding me and bringing me home safely. Similarly, the Idaho murders highlight how phone pings, surveillance footage, and even text messages can help investigators figure out a timeline and a motive. Technology can be weaponized by criminals to stalk or gain access, but it can also empower law enforcement and communities to help solve cases. And speaking of community, there is also so much value in the community taking action in a constructive way. Investigators received thousands of tips from everyday people, and it helped crack this case. Staying vigilant and looking out for one another can help avert or solve crimes more quickly. However, and this is really important, please always respect the boundaries of survivors and their families. Speculation, harassing phone calls, or social media blame only deepen the trauma. If you have legitimate information, share it with law enforcement. Otherwise, allow survivors and their families the space and compassion that they deserve. The aftermath of a violent crime often involves complex layers of guilt, trauma, and public scrutiny. Having empathy for those who are thrust into the spotlight is essential. We must allow them the privacy and support they need to grieve, to heal, and to share their stories in their own time if they so choose. As someone whose story made national headlines at a young age, I know how media coverage can both help and hurt. Media attention can rally support, it can rally resources, but it can also very quickly become invasive or sensational. The Idaho murders were, and still are, front-page news across the country. And this coverage, it put immense pressure on law enforcement to solve the case quickly, but it also puts it on the families who are forced to grieve under constant public scrutiny. Please, we must verify information before sharing, and we must choose empathy over sensationalism every time. In addition, there's the importance of advocacy and legislation. My advocacy work over the past 2 decades has shown me that creating safer digital and real-world environments often requires changes in the policy. Every action we take, big or small, can contribute to a safer world. Whether it's educating ourselves, advocating for better policies, or simply watching out for each other, we all have a part to play. And while we'll never eliminate every threat, we can reduce the likelihood of tragedies and learn to respond better when it does strike. And please remember that the victims were so much more than headlines. They were loved, and they will never be forgotten. Please keep their families in your thoughts, especially as the trial approaches and more coverage emerges. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps spread awareness and bring these important conversations to more people. Please stay safe. And if you or someone you love has experienced loss or trauma, know this: you are not alone. I'm Alicia Kozak, and I will see you in the next video.